What it do, comic babies? I'm Bunkmaster B, and today is April Fool's Day. April Fools! It's not April Fool's. It is neither April Fool's Day, the day that I am recording this, or the day that you're watching this, which is Monday, because that's when these things go up. Oh man, I pranked you guys. You guys got pranked. So, to make it up, because I totally slammed you guys super hard right there. Today we're going to talk about my favorite humor comics. Now these are comics that I don't think necessarily have to fall under the category of comedy, but I think are hilarious comics. And there's something about them that makes them really, really funny to me. And I think that humor is something that isn't kind of seen enough as a focus in books personally. I think we've seen a lot of very gritty, grimdark books. I think we get a lot of sort of like the Marvel style of, quips and one-liners and things like that. But as far as just a book being legitimately funny as the focus, that's something I think we don't see enough. And I want to celebrate it when it's done well. So let's go take a look at 5 books that do humor in comics really well. Let's go. All right, so starting off the list, I have to go with a Mark Russell book. Mark Russell is, I think right now, the king of comic satire. And I think there is no funnier book he has done than Not All Robots from AWA Upshot. Art is by Mike Deodato Jr. as well, and Lee Loughridge, or any other ways that I am mispronouncing it, did the colors. This book is really, really funny. Like most Mark Russell satire, there are going to be some people that really do not like it for the subject matter, and that's okay. It's still really funny. So this book right here, as I said, is a satire, and basically the whole idea is that human labor forces have been basically 100% replaced by robots. And it's looking at the whole idea that when some type of tragedy or some type of violence happens that's perpetrated by, one particular group, instead of oftentimes looking at the problems and saying, okay, why did this happen? Other people from that particular group come forward and say, hey, it's not all one of those people. And they're like, well, that's not really what we're talking about. Or even just sort of like systems endemic to it. It's very, very funny. One of the big focuses is kind of toxic masculinity, and that's the whole thing. It's stemming from the Me Too movement and the hashtag Not All Men that came from it. And so the idea is that every family has a robot that's been sort of assigned to its family, and it's just really looking at both toxic masculinity, corporate culture, app-based culture. There's so many things that are happening here, and the husband in this family is just kind of an apologist for this robot that the rest of the family knows is going to be basically murdering all of them, and he's just no, the robot works so hard for all of us. Talkin' Bot is the talk show here where they have 2 different robots. It's hosted by a robot, and there's, a human that goes on to debate against them. And just really, it's such a silly, look at some very, very serious issues that are going on. And again, there are going to be some people that are very much rubbed wrong by this book right here. Like you can see just right here, going off of it, these police bots go up and perhaps even murder them in their own homes. And the police are talking to this robot that is covered in human blood, and they're all talking in binary. And, the police walk away from this robot that is clearly covered in blood. We saw no evidence of criminal activity. Silly humans. And then, there's a part where even these robots are getting replaced by different kinds of robots. And so it's this really, really funny look at a whole bunch of different things. Like any good Mark Russell satire, there's a bunch of groups that end up getting looked at here. So Not All Robots by A.W.A. Upshot. Excellent book. Most people probably know Mark Russell by the Flintstones, and probably sort of think of that as one of the preeminent humor books out there. But actually, the next book I want to talk about is another Mark Russell book. It's another Mark Russell DC book, but that's a more recent one, Star Squadron. Flintstones is great. Don't get me wrong. This book is excellent. There's some really touching moments that come from this. But honestly, I think Star Squadron might be a little bit funnier. And on top of that, there's so many people that talk about this one. Like, you know this is great. If you don't need me telling you about it. You probably heard about it from a number of other people. Star Squadron was a book that came out, I want to say last year. Might have been 2 years ago. But the idea is that a whole bunch of different B and C and below list superheroes, they go to form a company. The Star Squadron isn't really a superhero team so much as it as an app-based superhero for rent team. And this guy, Brock Kensington, he was the Minuteman. He's got a hook for Miracolo. You can see right here, Red Tornado is the manager for this call center. And you can see we have all of these older heroes. There's quotas that they need to hit. Heroes for You is this app that people can go on and they can request the heroes to go forward with things. And again, it's both joking sort of about superheroes. Power Girl is this ambitious assistant manager who's, she's trying to get ahead. She's super ambitious. And again, it's really, really funny to look at both making fun of superhero books. It's looking at gig economy. There's so many things that are going on here. So this hero, Minuteman, when he takes the Miracolo, he gets 1 minute where he has superpowers and he's invulnerable. So he takes them and he shows them for this kid's birthday. He's flying. He's holding this car. Invites them to throw a hammer at him, and then it turns out that the Miracolo isn't working like it did, and so all these kids are throwing hammers at him and just beating him while the invulnerability isn't working. He's just bleeding out in front of them. Just really, really funny stuff. I mean, there is one of my absolute favorite jokes in all of comics comes a little bit later, and I don't want to spoil it, but there's a revelation about a competing company, a different one, that it's so blunt and so just like, well, of course that was the answer the whole time, and I absolutely love it. And one of my favorite jokes that I don't think makes sense out of context, and no one else really seemed to like. So right here, Minuteman, who saw in the first one, he's complaining that he's not getting enough jobs. He wants some solo work. And Red Tornado tells him, I can give you window jumper duty in the financial district. You'd be backing up Plastic Man. And he says, so I'd be second banana? And Red Tornado responds, what's wrong with being second banana? Sometimes you need two bananas. That is such a silly and stupid line. Sometimes you need two bananas. I love it. I adore that line. I took a screen cap of that. I sent it to a whole bunch of other people just on its own. And they were like, I don't get it. Maybe you won't. Maybe it's only funny to me. But Mark Russell, you and I, we get it. Off of that same idea, Bubble is another great book that really does humor really well, and it looks specifically at gig-based economy and app-based jobs. This one was a spinoff of a podcast. It's by First Second. This was actually a present from a buddy, and I tried listening to the podcast before this came out, and I wasn't really a huge fan of it. This is one of the few times where an adaptation comic is actually better than the original. There's so many things that happen here. It's actually legitimately touching at times. Its basic premise here is that there is a
an app called Hunter without an E, where for monsters in this kind of bubble city, when they get out, you can go and you can request a monster slayer to come and kill your monster. And, a lot of the monster slayers, they get rated, and what jobs they get depend on their ratings, and people are, rating them too low because they just killed the monster. They didn't engage in banter or anything like that. Really funny. So the last real one that we did right here, this was Star Squadron by Mark Russell with art by Steve Lieber. And next up, as I knock the camera around, is Who Killed Jimmy Olsen? Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen. This is a book written by Matt Fraction, also with art by Steve Lieber. There's apparently something about his art style that just leads to really funny books, which I appreciate. Matt Fraction, we have seen time and time again be really funny. If you ever read his Hawkeye run, there's so many moments of humor. Matt Fraction writes humor really well. This, I think, is the most purely funny book he's written. Just to kind of take this, my history with this book was I was really excited for it. I bought the trade, and on election day in 2020, I was waiting in line at my poll place, and there was this really long line. It took me about an hour from getting in line until I actually voted. And of course, it's election season, so everyone is all riled up, and, supporters on both sides are, blaming the other side. And it's an unpleasant environment to be in. And this book, I read this book, I think I got through all of it. If not, I got through most of it while just waiting in line. And in this politically charged environment I did not want to be in, I just kept laughing. And that's what I think a good humor book is it can give you an escape. And so the idea of this book right here is that it's written up of a lot of very small stories that are put together. So each story, it's done in kind of the backup feature style where this is all coming from. And it takes a lot of inspiration from the old Silver Age stuff. If we look on the back, you can see Jimmy, he gets dressed up like Wonder Woman. He's like Sergeant Rock. He's riding a dolphin. On the front here, you get to see the many faces of Jimmy Olsen. He becomes a giant turtle. And it takes a lot of the sort of very silly Silver Age stuff that happens and adapts it into current day. He takes on different alter egos where he gets in a prank war. He becomes a YouTube sensation. And all the while, so he goes by Timmy Olsen while he's doing it. And each time, each story is only like a few pages. And it skips around a little bit in continuity. It can be a little bit confusing. But once you kind of get the flow of it and you see what's happening, it's a very funny book. Steve Lieber, again, just these clean, pure lines that sort of harken back to Silver Age, where it's very simple isn't the right word, but you can see right here, there's not kind of a ton of busy backgrounds. It's sort of representational. It shows you what you need to see. It doesn't muddy the focus. The coloring is very straightforward. You got a lot of simple tones if there is any kind of different, gradients there. It's very subtle. It's this very classic looking book that works really well for it. And all the while, it's telling the story of who tried to kill Jimmy Olsen, where he is investigating his own attempted murder. Basically, he had through some hijinks, he had a Jimmy Olsen dummy that was put out that someone tried to shoot. And he's trying to figure it out the whole time. I love this book. I think this is hilarious. It's a beautiful look at what's beautiful about the Silver Age and just these goofy stories. And again, I will always love this book because it took a time that was not very fun in my life and gave me some humor and appreciation. So thank you, Jimmy Olsen. And last up is one of my favorite books of all time. Not just my favorite humor books, but this is Nextwave, Agents of H.A.T.E, written by Warren Ellis with art by the amazing Stuart Immonen. This was a book when I was, I'm not going to say first into comics, but when I was first seriously into comics. This is when I was pulling monthly, and I just absolutely loved it. I was in my late teens, and it was written for someone like me. And it's a group much like a one Star Squadron, some very low level Marvel heroes. You know, we get Elsa Bloodstone, we get Machine Man, we get the Captain, we get all these different characters. The Captain was made for this. And Warren Ellis just puts them in increasingly ridiculous situations, and Stuart Immonen draws the ever-loving crap out of it. I mean, it's a big, dumb book where big, dumb things happen, and they go boom, and there are silly little jokes, and there's certain parts of Marvel Comics history that are brought forward here. And Dirk Anger is the best villain. I mean, I don't even need to say anything about the plot. Just look at this amazing Stuart Immonen art. And just all these cutaways to these different past moments. And Elsa Bloodstone, so that's Tabby right there. She used to be Boom Boom from X, one of the X teams. I don't remember which one. It was one of the ones, I'm sure, that was by Rob Liefeld. And she's given a new life here as this really fun, dumb character. Everything goes wrong for Dirk Anger in a way that he's not trying to. I would say there is a little bit of a self-harm trigger warning here when it comes to Dirk Anger. Maybe he routinely tries to not be here anymore, and for someone who has trouble viewing things like that, maybe this is not the book for you. This was written in a different time, but this is just such a fun, silly book. I cannot recommend this enough. I adore this book. Again, it's not just one of my favorite humor books, but it's one of my absolute favorite books. You get to see these moments with Elsa where it goes back into her backstory with Ulysses Bloodstone, the 1970s Marvel monster hunter. So we get to see this moment here with her father when she was a baby, where she she's saying she kicks all this silverware and it goes into these guys. I learned that trick with a baby spoon. And you see her as a baby being held by her father in a flashback. Good girl, Ellie, good girl. Bleep! Now, in honor of your newfound skills, circumcise the hideous Fels monster of the Bihar province. And you just see this big thing in a diaper. And you get all these little cuts away. And it just celebrating the ridiculousness of Marvel history while making an amazing book. And if you have read this, or if you did like this, there's never been a follow-up. But honestly, the closest thing we ever got to it, and I know this sounds super weird, this is part of the Secret Wars that Hickman did. There were all the different Battle World storylines where they were going off and taking a look at different things now that all of everything is kind of smashed together. And they did a Marvel Zombies one. And normally I'm not a big Marvel Zombies fan, but people told me, just honestly, like, this one's worth reading. It's written by Cy Spurrier, art by Kev Walker. Not a huge Kev Walker comic art fan, but he did some amazing Magic card art. And this is called Marvel Zombies, but honestly, this is just Marvel Elsa Bloodstone. Cy, I think, had to have read Nextwave Agents of H.A.T.E. and absolutely loved it and used it to tell his own Elsa story, because this is the same version of Elsa that came from Nextwave here. You can see through it, you get those same cutaways, and it's just everything you loved about the character from Nextwave put into a new situation that he's getting to tell his own story. You can, if you have an Ollie's anywhere near you, you can probably find this there. I got this for like stupid cheap. If not, I'm sure you can find it used for like $1 or something like that. But for those that like Nextwave and want more, there was never a sequel. This is honestly the closest thing to it. I know it sounds weird. Check this out.
So those are my picks for my favorite humor comics. And you might be saying, hey, Bunk, what's going on? That wasn't 5, no matter how you did your math. And guess what? that is my final prank for you. Oh! I got you again. You thought you were getting 5 humor comics. You got however many you decided you wanted to count there. I talked about some, I mentioned some, I showed some, but I didn't really go into it. However you do your math, that wasn't 5. And that's on you. You got pranked again, twice in one video. Man, I think the only way you could really stick it back to me is by liking, commenting, and subscribing. That would show me. But seriously, what humor comics am I missing? What have you read that you think needs to get more coverage? What's the best humor book you've read that no one else is talking about? I'd love to know in the comments because, again, I want more humor. I like being happy. Who doesn't? Talk to me. Let's laugh together. But with that, I've been Bunkmaster B. You all have been pranked. Catch you next video.